Hi everybody, it's Andy here, and as you can see, I've got Mike Bristow with me. Hi Mike, how you doing?
Hi Andy, very good. How are you?
Very, very good, mate. Now we've been doing a little series of podcasts, live broadcasts into Ping Community, talking about funding. And funding is one of those things that is a real pain in the neck for a lot of people. Going to banks, trying to get bank loans and mortgages and all the rest of it can be pretty daunting, and it's a bit of a hard workaround when you know that there are other ways of doing this, which is why we got you guys on. So we're going to be talking about funding innovation and sort of the things that we can do with funding and the sort of stuff that you can do for developers and property investors that will just make their life a lot easier. So I'm going to put your slides up, and just we haven't got a lot of slides. We're not going to go on for a massive amount of time today, because we're going to really focus on exactly what you can do and how you can do it. So I've got your slides up. So yeah, let's get into this.
And as you know, Andy, I could go on for hours and hours on any topic, but
as we all can.
Indeed. So, but let's zoom into funding innovation. And I think we do a lot of research. We do focus groups and online surveys and things like that. We put all of that together and make sure we build a really, really sort of customer focused proposition. Okay. And there's one focus group where we got a lot of developers in a room, and we were talking to them, and the trick with focus groups is you sort of ask very few questions and then I shut up. Right, which sometimes is a challenge, but we listen to the conversation between developers, right? And in one focus group, we asked people about their experiences with traditional sources of finance for their property projects, and generally what happens is you ask them a question like that, and then a lot of swearing happens, right? And then we get into the meat of the topic, right? And there's this one quote that came out of one of those sessions, okay, that was referring to banks funding their property projects, okay? And this developer said their reaction to a clever deal was to lend me less and charge me more, right? And that is the absolute epitome of this sector, okay? So in actual fact, it's a very rational banking reaction where they don't really understand this clever deal, this creative deal structure, this put together by so much effort and thought and etc. and creativity and entrepreneurial nature of a small and medium-sized developer to structure something that really, really stacks up and makes great commercial sense.
And you sort of can't blame them in some ways, because it's not their business. Their business is lending money for profit, you know. So you can sort of understand that they're not into the property game. They don't really understand these deals, you know. Especially if you've been in it a while and you're able to, cleverly structure your approach. You know, you've got your numbers there. They don't really understand a lot of that. I mean, they understand the concept of lending, but it's just all about risk for them, isn't it?
Well, exactly, and they don't really understand a well-structured option deal or exchange delay completion or joint venture structures or whatever. Okay, and you're absolutely right. It's risk. Okay, and risk isn't a bad thing, and we bear risk. Okay, but we take a different attitude, right? So what this person was trying to illustrate by saying their reaction to a clever deal was to lend me less and charge me more was to actually say, well, the bank couldn't be bothered to understand the structure of the deal and the nuances of it. What they just said is, I don't really understand it. I'm going to de-risk it by lending less and charging more, right? And that is quite frankly, a pain in the arse for really good creative property professionals trying to do well-structured deals, right? And our reaction to that is not to say, well, let's not bother understanding it. We've probably structured a deal like that ourselves in our careers, okay? We really understand that. We actually pat you on the back and applaud you for being smart enough to structure a great deal with a vendor or a joint venture partner or whatever. And that makes you more backable, not more of a risk. And so it's just putting in the effort and having the fundamental understanding in the first place to understand what you're trying to do and how you're doing it, with deal structures that are creative, quality, well put together, and we get that and we back that, and that is the beauty of property financed by property people, okay, and which is fundamentally what we are. So let's just talk a little bit of example about that. I mean, first of all, and we talked about this in other sessions, that we fund any type of short-term finance. Okay, so anything that will get you from starting a deal, picking up a deal, joint venturing a deal, whatever, okay, getting control of an asset, okay, whatever you're going to do to it, and up to the point at which you either sell it or you refinance and hold it, right? So there's lots of pockets of opportunity here, right? There's development finance, there's heavy refurb finance, there's light refurb finance, HMO and CoLiving finance, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so there's lots of types here, okay, that we've codified into these icons. We have products that sit behind that. But ultimately, and I'll talk about this in a second, special situations finance on the bottom right here. Okay, that's basically the catch-all for everything else that doesn't fit in here, into the other product types. Let me talk about a couple of these in particular that are really quite hot, especially at the moment. But these are, product fit for purpose, ready for however you want to structure deals. So first of all, development exit and development finish and exit finance, right? This is where you're on a project, okay, and actually, maybe there's been a global pandemic in the background, and your project timelines have moved out, okay, and you're starting to get towards those devious hidden fees on your current facility. We can help you by refinancing that, giving you time to finish it off and to sell, right? So that's quite hot at the moment because, as you'll understand, there's quite a lot of sort of projects that are behind timelines. But now let's get into the innovation stuff, right? Airspace development finance. Everyone saw the relaxation of planning laws that the government have been pulling over the last 12 months. Okay, that's opened up real opportunity in airspace development and putting basically building homes on top of existing buildings. Right, great opportunity. Quite complex, and actually we funded quite a lot of these deals because actually you've got to have the specialist knowledge to really understand what some of the risks are, and we can help you understand some of those risks and mitigate some of those risks. One of the coolest projects we've done, okay, is we mixed airspace development finance with modern methods of construction. Okay, so modular builds, right? And there was a project near Waterloo Station where it was a freehold block, plonk, 2 modular flats on top. It was actually overlooking Waterloo Station. So obviously that's quite high value property, right? This was all worthwhile doing, but there are loads of complexities with how you get that freehold agreement to proceed, right through to, has the logistics company that arranged delivery of the modular pods, have they agreed, closed down the road so they can get there? Have they checked where they're going to lay their pads for the crane to lift it up and put it on? All of these complexities that are really core to some of these innovative, high potential products. And if you get it right, it's new. But if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. It's not easy, but okay, we get it, and we can back you doing it.
It makes a lot of difference when you're dealing with people who are financing the project that know and understand these things. They understand the sort of the anticipation or the problems that people have. The concept of going to a bank and knowing that they're not going to understand something like something which is a modern construction or a modular construction and things like that. They don't really know those sort of things, whereas you guys have seen these things before. I mean, you've probably been looking at these sort of things yourselves. Exactly.
So I'm going to a site on Friday in Streatham where they're bolting together the modules on that development. So I'm going to get a few pictures, but the interesting thing is, and I can't be there, so each night over the next few days, they're delivering those at night because the roads are clearer. Okay, and there's been a load of logistical problems with that as well. But that's a fascinating scene. So we'll get loads of pictures. We'll share them on socials, and we'll demonstrate how we're backing the sort of modular construction methods. And the UK is light years behind Scandinavia, Japan, and much of Europe as well on adoption of modular construction, modern methods of construction. So let's so what else? Well, okay, so HMO and co-living. Well, that's not new. That's not particularly innovative. Okay, the sort of the larger schemes, especially around co-living. I mean, we funded one in Plymouth that I talk about quite a lot. It's a 30-bed co-living scheme. Okay, and actually, as you go up the number of beds, you've got to think about things in different ways. And larger schemes like that are basically commercial products. Okay, how are we backing that? How are we underwriting it? Are we really understanding it? How are we referencing room rates to really understand, does this stack to A, help you pick the right project, but also us to understand, okay, that we're comfortable to back that. But so not necessarily pure innovation, but people are innovating by building more innovative co-living schemes that actually, you really need to understand the resonance of that proposition and how you're able to achieve young professional rates for shared accommodation. So you've got to have that edge versus the competition.
You say it's not innovative, but HMOs have been going for a long time. It's a big strategy with a lot of property professionals. But the co-living side, although there have been some named people that are sort of champions the sort of co-living concept, I think a lot of people who are getting into the HMO side of this are looking at that, and it is very innovative, because it's a different sort of mindset way of looking at a HMO.
Yeah. And
so, again, it's one of those things that, you hear a lot about, and within PIN community, you'll see this quite a lot, with people putting up pictures of their new co-living spaces.
Yeah.
But it's normally the same sort of names, and then you see a few people coming in with the same sort of concept. So it's still pretty new. It's a different mindset from just a basic HMO.
Exactly. So let's move on to joint venture finance. Now, this is a huge area, and this is basically saying, typically where this happens is the buyer, the developer, wants to buy a site or an existing building. They do all the maths and say, look, I can only pay that, right? And the owner of that parcel of land or building or whatever is saying, no, I need that. Okay, and there's a gap, and an impasse happens and nothing gets built. No homes get delivered as a result. Okay, and there are many situations like that, especially with input cost inflation driving down residual values of sites. Okay, where actually what you want to do is put everything in an SPV and have a shareholder agreement between the asset owner and the person who's going to do the work. One person's bringing the asset, one person's bringing the finance and all the work, right? You crack on, and homes get delivered, profit gets realized, and the vendor ultimately has a share of the upside because they put in the asset. It's also quite an efficient way of doing it because there's no transaction in the first place. There's no stamp duty. There's no legal costs. Well, there are legal costs to set up the SPV and put everything in, right? But that can happen quicker. It's less friction, less barriers to getting a deal done and ultimately getting homes built and profit realized from a site. That's just one of many examples of joint ventures that we funded. Okay, and there are lots and lots of sort of tips and tricks around the joint venture structures you need to get right. Okay, and that's rolling out the right SPV structure, the right tax structure, the right agreement, the right shareholders agreement, the right rights, the right voting agreements, etc. And that is really super important to get bolted down up front. And guess what? Banks and traditional sources of finance hate those deals, right? But they make so much sense from a property person's perspective. So a great example of a type of deal that we are very happy with backing and will help with that structuring best practice as well. And then finally, or special situations finance. As I mentioned earlier, that's our sort of catch-all of everything else that we couldn't draw up an icon for and build a product around. And this really is, stuff that comes in doesn't necessarily fall in our exact product buckets, but they are very, very worthy of funding. One example was someone looking to buy 10 Victorian houses, which are single let properties from a tired landlord. That person wanted to buy all 10, do a rolling refurb and conversion into HMOs across all of them, exit between 3 or 4 of them, okay, leave no cash in the deal, keep 6 high yielding HMO assets, right? Great deal, okay? And guess what? That takes quite a bit of work from our team to make sure we get the right structure right for that exact deal. So we hesitate from calling it bespoke. It is bespoke in terms of it's a very purpose built finance structure for that, but it's not bespoke as in you pay a massive premium for that tailored sort of product. That very much fits in line with our sort of standard development finance pricing. So there are a few examples of how we're funding innovation. And then very recently, only a few months ago, we also launched planning gain finance, which basically is stepping right. So normally, if there was an asset that was going to be converted, say let's keep it simple, and it's just a reasonable sized residential block that was going to be converted into a big co-living scheme or something, change of use class or whatever, we would typically need to see planning permission in place for that. But actually now we've got in-house planning expertise, and we're willing to underwrite that planning risk in certain circumstances, not all circumstances. And that gives you an extra bit of firepower and finance to be able for us to support you buying earlier stage property and also benefit from the advice of our in-house planning expertise. So that's really it. Other than to say, hey, look at our the case studies, video case studies on our website at crowdproperty.com. You can find case studies through the menu system. For example, here on the middle row, the second from the left, okay, you can see in the background there that is Waterloo Station. That is the modular drop-on onto a freehold building. So if you're interested in air rights, modular, etc., that's a great case study to have a look at. Top right is actually a modular build as well. And you can get a feel for great schemes being built. Top left is the 30-bed co-living scheme. So you can really get a feel for what deals are people doing, how are they doing it, what are they looking like, what is the end product, what's the starting point. The starting point of the top left is fascinating. It's just literally a ramshackle chapel with no floors, no nothing, just a barber's chair. It was a bit like a Quentin Tarantino torture den when it started, and it ended up as an amazing 30-bed co-living scheme. So do get some ideas and inspiration from those. And ultimately, this is why property finance by property people makes sense. We've probably done these deals or these deal structures or these types of developments ourselves. So we really understand them. And if we haven't done them ourselves, we will have backed them before. So we can really help you out in getting the right deal together, getting the right structure together, and throughout the build process. That's what we're here for.
Brilliant. And just to reiterate what we've been talking about in the past is the ability just to apply for some funding. I'm going to take the presentation down, so we've got. I can just see you. It's to apply. I've just put something up on the screen, which is the website that you can go to, which is crowdproperty.com/apply. What's been impressive is a lot of the feedback that we've got is that the application process is so much easier than they ever thought. Just want to to finish this off, just give us a little bit of a précis of what you mean by the process, the application process, a little bit easier.
So on that web link at crowdproperty.com apply, you'll see a 12-box form. Okay, that is all we ask for to start the conversation. Okay, and then we'll get in touch. We'll do this crazy thing, which is phoning you and speaking.
Well, actually talking to people
and getting to know you. We might be a very, very tech-oriented business, but ultimately property is about people. We want to understand your vision. We want to help you create that vision. And we'll talk you through the process. We'll ask you bits and pieces more, and we'll take you through the process. We'll give you confidence as to whether it's a project we're back or not. Okay, that may indicate whether to proceed and follow up on that and spend more time on it or not. And you will always have the direct contact of people in our office to speak about those deals. But hopefully what people have also realized is when you submit that 12-box form, which will only take 3 or 4 minutes to start that conversation, we also then give you some insights, and we give you a listing of all the service providers in your local area around that project, things like architects, etc., who have done projects exactly the same size as your project, right? So it's all ranked. Architects, they might have done 8 projects of your size in your local area within a radius. That's really useful, because guess what? They probably know a thing or two about a project of that size and seen the tips and the tricks. They could help, and across all different service providers. And then finally, we also give you local planning applications and what's going on around that little micro area, whether it's down to half a mile or a mile around your site. Okay, so you can tell, is there a 500-bed Berkeley Homes scheme going up, or actually is the next door neighbour turning into an HMO? When are they going to come on stream, etc. It just helps your process, because this is just a fraction of the data we look at. Okay, but it's helpful for yourself as well.
Brilliant. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure again, as usual. It's great that we're doing this series, because it's every time we do one of these, it's sort of clarifying a little bit more about how, ease of use of the product, which is basically the Crowd Property product, and the way things can be funded and what sort of products can be funded. And I think a lot of people are beginning to realise that what they're doing right now, the sort of deals they're looking at right now, could be straight in. You can get straight in, get the application in. That's why we put the website up. Get the application in, and then you can start talking to people who actually know what they're talking about in this business, which is incredibly important. I mean, you couldn't put a price on that.
Yeah, exactly. And you probably see Andrew pacing around behind me and some of the team, probably on the phone to prospective developers looking at sites. So
fantastic.
That's human interaction right here, right now.
That's brilliant, Mike. Listen, Mike, thanks very much for joining us again. We're going to be doing another one in a week or so, and keep those questions coming in. Keep asking the questions, and if you've got any queries about this, then put them in the comments below, and we'll cover them in that. So until next time, Mike, thanks very much.
Thank you, Andy. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers.